Sonic the Hedgehog is in no shortage of die-hard fans, and as with any franchise as beloved as this one, there are bound to be countless interesting mysteries and perplexing discoveries. And a handful of the most fascinating of these come from Sonic 2, which because of its co-development between Japanese and American developers was met with many struggles and a whole host of cut content that never saw the light of day. Many in the Sonic community have even made it their mission to dig into this title and its past, to unearth some of the ideas from this classical original that almost no one knows about. In fact, all this sleuthing has resulted in countless finds throughout the decades, even within the last couple of years as well, with entire new zones, enemies, storylines, and main characters being discussed that would have completely changed Sonic as we know it had they come to fruition. But out of all of these finds, none of them quite reached the unnerving and disturbing level of one particular image that was recently found. You see, in a 2004 interview with one of the game developers, Tom Payne, he mentioned that he had a secret stash of cut content related to Sonic 2, as well as endless pages of documentation and notes which the world needed to see. But for years after this, many of these apparently revolutionary documents remained shrouded in secrecy. That was until a chance meeting in April of 2019 between Tom Payne and Jason Morehouse, an owner of a California-based retro game store, at a garage sale. At the garage sale, the two randomly brought up their shared love of Sonic, and when Tom revealed he had a massive box of secrets sitting in his house on the second game's development, Jason was foaming at the mouth. Eventually, this led to Jason and a small team of investigators getting their hands on everything that Tom had, which included lots of cut levels and items the fanbase never even knew existed at all. However, it was also at this point that one investigator named Bob Morgan unearthed one very peculiar image in some of the sprite storage memory bins that sent shivers down his spine. Now affectionately called bobnface.png, the image depicts a sadistic man in a green tuxedo holding up a peace sign while seemingly half of his face is being erased, and a smile contorted to non-human proportions. Behind him, almost etched into the side of what looks to be a building, is a copy of a similar face, but with a much more evil look, almost framed in the image of a man in a bloodthirsty rage, but also with most of his face missing. On top of this, the man in the green tuxedo seems to have what is a bullet hole, along with red and blue blood strewing down his outfit, and a host of very blocky and creepy colors elsewhere all behind him. And not only is this image one of the only of its kind in the entire codebase, but it also has no immediately obvious tie-ins to Sonic, making it even more horrifying. So what on earth is this chilling picture doing in the development folder for Sonic 2? Well, if you dig deeper into the files that Bob uncovered during his investigation, you will also find a set of 6 smaller images, each one depicting this same man with a different set of expressions, with each more alarming than the last. So obviously then, this strange man must have been purposely included here. And in fact, if we zoom in on one of the gray brick level setup images in the same folder, we also see blocks that are covered in human faces, presumably this same man's. Without a doubt, these creepy photos and their inclusion in the Sonic 2 development kit is no mistake, but it also begs the question, what was going on here? Some in the community have guessed it may actually be cut art for an unreleased Mega Drive game called Spinny and Spike vs. the Nightmare King, while others have pointed out how closely these images resemble popular serial killers or even some of the managerial staff working on Sonic 2 at the time. But regardless of whether these images came from disgruntled employees, another game, or even an evil team member with a fascination with serial killers and murder, the mystery to this day still remains unsolved. The 90s were a fascinating time in games history, full of many experimental and strange titles that were truly unlike anything we've seen before or seen since. It was an era of ingenuity and innovation in an infantile industry, and led to the birth of many now beloved and respected mega franchises we see today. However, much less known to the general public, it also led to some of the most unsettling and truly horrifying experiences imaginable. Games that walked the line of the uncanny valley and almost seemed fake when we look at them nowadays. nowadays. And without a doubt, one of the least well known yet most disturbing of all of these is a little gem known as Shine. Originally released in Germany and Russia using both languages in 1996, Shine immediately stood out, appearing as a demo CD-ROM in some magazines and convenience stores, and even as a full game in some local shops. If you actually managed to get your hand on the game at this time, you were met with one of the most terrifying and unexplainable things in history. You play as a character named Shine, who awakes in a bizarre mental asylum of sorts in a place called Twilight Town, where there is no day or night and all sorts of perplexing people and creatures alike roam the halls. The art style and vibes are a mix between hard metal punk rock and a cyberpunk fever dream, and these two are stitched together by a host of petrifying loud noises and sketchy visuals and instantly put you on edge.
Ich sah ihn! Ich sah ihn! Auch wenn die beiden Cops da drin mir nicht glauben.
And as if it couldn't get any more confusing, the plot makes even less sense. The first person you meet is a woman named Natasha who talks to you in strange riddles and ciphers, and from here on out, the narratives and themes devolve into complete insanity, where you quite literally have no idea what's going on. Characters speak in multiple different languages like German, French, and Russian, while puzzles themselves are in English, which completely disorients any player unless they are a natural polyglot or someone fluent in a variety of languages and dialects. And on top of this, the majority of the actual story consists of nothing but hyper creepy and super short live action scenes where actors that look like they are being held captive against their will read gibberish from an incoherent script that makes no sense. The game itself plays like any standard action adventure, where you click around on the screen to make your way from one location to another, but even when you can pick up items in the environment to use in puzzles, there's no dedicated or coherent UI panel to actually manage them. So the further you get into the game, the more and more it becomes a mess of confusion and disarray. But considering that the entire journey takes place in a mental asylum, maybe that's the point. A slow dive into the mind of a person teetering on the edge of insanity who is seeing and hearing things they shouldn't in a place that might not even exist. And this premise only gets more horrifying when we consider that the actual creator of the game was a man who upon its completion completely disappeared never to be seen again, and no one can find any more information on him. Could it be that this random game from the 90s is actually a look into one man's twisted mind, or potentially even a serial killer revealing his antics? Well, truthfully, it's hard to tell, because the game itself is so hard to understand, and even if you try to look up things about it online, you will quickly be met with a dead end, considering only a handful of people actually ever even got to play this game in its rumored original form, which potentially even was home to real videos of animal and human murder and torture, which could be why the game swiftly disappeared off store shelves afterwards. Nonetheless though, the biggest mystery around this strange game is just what it even is, and who the man behind it claims to be. And also, what is the bigger message behind the game itself, and especially the strange ending picking a replication mother or father and traveling deep inside what looks like a human body. Maybe the entire thing is a commentary on birth or life, or something about the human condition. And throughout the multitude of live action sequences we are treated to in game, we get tons of bizarre questions like, what is it all for? What needs to be done in the end? And it only adds to the intrigue here, as it's clear that the creator was trying to say something, but no one can figure out exactly what that something is. Or in other words, this game might just be a window into the mind of someone potentially very unwell and in need of help. And whether this is at the hands of a drug-induced bender or a mind detached from reality after kidnapping and murdering helpless individuals, or just a guy messing with us all, the mystery behind Shine is still one of the most fascinating in the video game industry and least well known out there. If you've played any of the mainline Fallout games, you've likely at some point in your travels stumbled upon this absolute stud, otherwise known as the Mysterious Stranger. And just as the name would imply, he truly is quite elusive. In the first and second Fallout games, the isometric ones from Black Isle Studios and Interplay, the Stranger will appear periodically in your travels as either a man or a woman, usually in dire times of need helping you vanquish enemies. But if you try to talk to the individual afterwards, they will always ignore you or simply state that they're there to protect and will not talk. In Fallout 3 in New Vegas, you can once again find this mysterious stranger, but this time in all their 3D glory and also sporting a special Magnum pistol, which when holstered and unholstered plays a little Western jingle, probably a nod to the detective noir and Western vibes that the character gives off. And finally, in Fallout 4 and 76, we once again will stumble upon the mysterious stranger frequently, willing to help us out either when going down in battle or watching from afar over our most important moments. However, most peculiar of all, despite seeing this trenchcoat-loving maniac throughout multiple games that take place over hundreds of years, we're no closer to figuring out the real identity of this figure. What we do have, though, is a lot of odd evidence. First of all, in Fallout New Vegas, we're able to meet a man named the Lonesome Drifter, who, if we inquire about more, will tell us that he was abandoned by his dad at a young age and forced to figure out how to survive with his mother. It's something that we would expect to be commonplace in the dystopian world of Fallout, and thus it's not very notable at first. But where things get extremely interesting is if we actually look at the pistol the Lonesome Drifter is holding, none other than the mysterious stranger's prized Magnum, sporting the same exact Western rift from before. Trying to get more information about this out of the Lonesome Drifter doesn't lead us very far, but it still does give us a big hint that the mysterious stranger is likely this man's father, and that he for some reason abandoned his family to presumably watch over you. But the man's secret identity doesn't stop there, because if we look at the Fallout official game guide, things get even more crazy. In the pages of this helpful companion to the game, we are told that the mysterious stranger is an angel-like figure of sorts, who stalks the player and assures their survival, and even more horrifyingly, is also not listed as a man, but an unknown being. But how could this be the case? After all, isn't the mysterious stranger the father of the Lonesome Drifter, who is a real human being? Well, in Fallout 4, if we investigate some of Nick Valentine's secret stash of intel, we can come across a page he has gathered on the mysterious stranger himself, where he notes how he is always one step ahead and lurking in the shadows. And here Nick makes the impressive guess that the mysterious stranger might actually be the mysterious stranger, multiple men and women that are part of a shadowy organization. And yet, even with all this, we still have no idea who this man, woman, or thing really is. Multiple theories in the community have sprung up, ranging from Vault-Tec scientists from the future trying to time travel to ensure we survive and enable some big event, secret Enclave members that have a vested interest in the player character, all the way down to the mysterious stranger being Santa Claus, who had to figure out something else to do after he could no longer deliver presents around the world for Christmas. And yes, the theory actually has some compelling evidence to back it up. But maybe the most likely theory, based on all of the evidence we have before us, is that the mysterious stranger, as his name implies, is something we cannot fully understand. Potentially, the figure could be an eldritch being of sorts that for some reason has taken an interest in us as the player, and maybe is even trying to break the fourth wall in order to communicate with us in the real world somehow. Bethesda probably won't ever give us a definitive answer though, and I think that's for the better. After all, the fear of the unknown, or mysteries that keep us on the edge of our seat, well that's what makes games and their deep lore so interesting in the first place, and sometimes never getting answers is so much more satisfying than having everything explained to you, as weird as that sounds. When I was a kid, one of my favorite guilty pleasure games, without a doubt, was Saints Row 2. It's a series that is as wacky as it is fun, and while Grand Theft Auto has always been the bigger draw, there was a point in time where the Saints Row franchise was giving it a run for its money. But while the series is known for tons of strange and weird Easter eggs and secrets, maybe none are more insane and mysterious than the peculiar sighting of a shadowy figure known as the Freezer. Shortly after the release of the game, some players began to notice that under certain sets of conditions when playing the Zombie Uprising minigame, their game would not only freeze and their disc potentially get damaged, but right at the same time of it happening, a dark and ominous figure would appear only for a half second on screen. In order to get this event to occur, you have to load into the Zombie Uprising minigame, and when you unlock grenades, head over to a nearby balcony and propel yourself onto the top of the building by ragdolling your body upwards, after which a glitch will occur where you suddenly appear on the streets of the city. From this point onward, you are constantly being stalked by this shadowy creature, and once it finds you, your game will immediately freeze, and under extreme circumstances, which occur more frequently on the Xbox 360 version of the game, your disc will even get scratched and the game will remain unplayable forever. Multiple players reported seeing this event occur, and we even have first-hand video evidence of how it happened and what the shadowy figure looks like. However, what we don't have is any concrete explanations. Potentially the most likely thing though would be that the freezer is actually nothing more than a 2D shadow render of an NPC, which are used in the game all over the place for faraway characters to maintain performance. But still, that doesn't explain why this figure is following us everywhere. And also, this would have to be an especially bad glitch, considering it can break game discs and was even known to give some Xbox 360 users the ring of death on their console hardware, meaning they no longer could play any games at all. Regardless, it's one of the coolest unsolved mysteries from the series, and unlike many others out there, it's not just something creepy that takes up our headspace, but rather a mystery that can quite literally break your hardware you've spent hundreds of dollars on. The Mass Effect series is without question one of the most fascinating and engrossing worlds ever created for a video game. And a big part of that is all of the unsolved mysteries and questions that the universe left for us to discover that to this day are still being talked about. But in my opinion, the greatest of all of these might also be one of the smallest, that a large portion of the player base doesn't even know about. You see, in every Mass Effect game, a crucial part of the gameplay loop is heading back to your ship, the Normandy, after every mission and opening up the galaxy map to see where you want to go next. And during this downtime, you also are given the opportunity to explore the galaxy a little bit, to check out planets off the beaten path. In the second game, for example, this means deploying probes to gather resources. In the third, it's capturing weapons and infantry units to join you in your fight against the Reapers, and in the first game, sometimes it even includes touching down on barren planets themselves to drive around and explore. But regardless of the specific title, one of the best parts of these sections is also getting to just read the descriptions of each and every planet you come across and soak up the world building and lore that this series is so well known for. However, while many of these planets simply have descriptions of the atmosphere and history, some are hiding a lot more. And out of all of these, maybe none are more mysterious and terrifying than Logan. Found in the first Mass Effect, in my opinion the best Mass Effect game ever made, Logan is an unassuming gas giant located in the Theseus system of the Attican Beta cluster of the Milky Way. It has no standout features, no main or side missions, and is one of the shortest planet descriptions in the entire game. But even with the few words we do get to hear about this strange place, you can't help but instantly feel captivated. The planet description in-game reads as follows. Logan is a standard hydrogen-helium gas giant. The survey team who charted the system 20 years ago reported many strange disturbances in Logan's clouds, suggesting that many remarkably large solid objects were present beneath the cloud tops. As the ship approached, however, they subsided one by one. These disturbances have never been reported again. So what exactly were these mysterious large objects beneath the clouds on Logan then? And even more interestingly, why have we never heard from them ever since? Some in the community think that they could have been massive helium-3 mining rigs that are being used by covert illicit mining operators of Volus Imperialis. But if that were the case, you would think that someone would have picked up on it by now. And also, it would be strange that these operations would never pick up again, assuming the scale that they must have been on to be picked up by ship scanners. And this is where things get interesting. What if the readings that came up on that ship's scanner were actually Leviathans? For those of you that don't know, Leviathans were revealed in the third game to be the original organic race that developed the hyper-intelligent machine species known as the Reapers, whose prime directive was to protect life, and in doing so, they decided that every 50,000 years, all sufficiently intelligent organic life would need to be purged in order to keep the galaxy afloat indefinitely and preserve organic thought. This is because the Reapers determined that the organisms otherwise would always lead themselves to their own doom through creation of things like hostile artificial intelligence. So over millions of years, this cycle has continued on, with the Reapers every 50,000 years killing most of the life in the Milky Way and allowing the primitive species to survive in order to once again eventually discover the massive Citadel space station that will propel their technology forward while secretly allowing the Reapers to watch them. So what if those ship scanner readings on Logan were actually some hidden Leviathans themselves? After all, we know from the Leviathan DLC in the third game that some others are hidden in the galaxy that have still yet to be found. And potentially even more cool, what if those readings are actually an undiscovered race from a previous cycle that is secretly pulling the strings of the main campaign behind the scenes and slowly leading the Reapers to their doom? Maybe the mystery of the Thorian and its power of mind control and where it comes from can be solved on Logan. Maybe the virtual aliens or the idea of a race that put their consciousness in massive supercomputers to sail through the stars is actually hiding here. But really, the ideas and things that Logan could be are endless, and as to what was really picked up on the scanners that day, we may never know. Truly, one of the coolest and most unassuming game mysteries out there, not only because it's fascinating in its own right, but because it would fit so perfectly into a future story in the franchise or could even tie into the next game's main plot perfectly. And more than anything, it's the best example of why I think Mass Effect 1 is the best in the series. There are just so many mysteries in that game like this one, that even in just one paragraph can make your imagination go wild with possibilities and make you want to dive into the universe and its lore more and more.